All right, we're going to start off here with Kano. I'll let the guests introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. My name is Blazing for Lethal. Very active within the Kano Discord and the main Discord. I've been playing Kano since the release day of Arcane Rising. As mentioned before, I have almost 14,000 games on him. I've been playing him nonstop since Arcane Rising, and as such, I've brew constantly, and so I adore Kano. Been playing him for a very long time, and I'm excited to talk about him today.
Yeah, 13K games is quite a few games. I like, this is my favorite hero so far. I've played him for almost 2 years straight now myself. I got most of your lists up here, but before I go into any of them, how do you think now we got the ban restricted? Where do you think he sits?
Where he fits into the meta at large, though, if we look at most of the popular aggro decks right now, Syndra has been the definitive answer, more or less, in terms of aggro against Florian, for example. And we have a very good Syndra matchup. We can't stop Mask from triggering very consistently, but she is unable to interact with us at the same time. So, most lists I've seen play AV1 and Spell Void 1, maybe AV2 at most. In that scenario, Wildfire is always going to deal at least 4 or more, and we will have approximately 2.5 to 3 turns to find our combo. If you look at some of the videos I've put out and a lot of just the general discourse on ICBM Kano, you consistently reach a Wildfire by turn 2 or 3. And if you find that, the deck is just built to be a machine, churning out extenders and making your combo big enough to win. So into Syndra, we have a very good matchup, regardless of the build you're playing, because she can't interact with us, and she can't prevent much on damage on Wildfire, so we can get her. So that's really favorable. The other decks that pop up at the top, you've got Azalea. Azalea can be kind of hard because if she chains Arsenal Disruption, we're not going to be able to combo with 5 cards, and you need 13 resources realistically to combo. If you don't have 13 resources, you're not going to be able to do a full combo, and you basically just fall apart. So Azalea can be really tough if she gets back-to-back Arsenal Hate. But if she doesn't, she's just an aggro deck with AB2, Spell Void 1 or 2. Is good, but she usually has to shoot her arrow, and once she shoots the arrow, it's only Spell Void 1. So on average, she'll prevent 3 on Wildfire. And we can deal with that so long as you have Arsenal. Outside of those particular heroes, Kano just has a very strong matchup spread right now, especially ICBM Kano. We don't really care about what other people do. We can just play our game consistently, play a couple potions, find Wildfire, shoot Wildfire, extenders, win the game. So, with Nats coming up, US Nats specifically coming up, I think it's going to be quite a Wild West format. We don't really know exactly what's going to be going down. I think Kano's very well positioned overall because Assassin, which is the next group I think most people want to talk about when it comes to Kano, used to be a fabulous matchup because we could just pitch stack them. Now they have the Widow Suite and we can't pitch stack them, not consistently. I find Assassin to actually be a pretty good matchup for Kano. Some people really disagree with me, but the thing with them, especially the Arachnes, you shoot a good Wildfire, Spell Void, they cannot prevent damage for the rest of the game. And most of the Surge cards are abysmal unless they trigger, and if they can't block, they're always going to trigger. So suddenly, if you can break their Spell Void, you will consistently be able to do something like open the floodgates for 3 or 4, draw 2 cards, Kano, send another card, and deal 10 damage pretty much every turn, and you should be able to successfully win. The times Assassin's going to get Kano is when you either don't have a big enough Wildfire for them to actually care. For example, you send, let's say you have no potions out, you go Wildfire and you have a Floodgate banished or something. Opponent might be, and they'll just AB the Wildfire and then AB Spell Void the Floodgate. If you can't the Floodgate even further, your combo fizzles and they will be completely fine. Or worst case scenario, they don't even use Spell Void at all. They just use the Arcane Barrier, die, and then you're kind of just your combo, and they didn't burn their Spell Void. To sum up my thoughts in a short form, pretty much just ignore what they're doing. Their disruption, if it hits Arsenal, we don't like that action. Unless they get to see our hand, usually isn't actually that bad. I find you're better off just not blocking and saying, you need to actually really threaten me. If you don't, I'm just going to keep digging and shooting and doing whatever I can until I find the wildfire and I launch it. Those are really, I think, the main areas to look for. Those groups of heroes is Azalea, Syndra, Florian / Guardian, and then the assassins. And there's no point in talking about Prism. If you pair into a Prism, you're basically just going to lose unless you draw perfectly and they draw badly. But into the field at large, I would say Kano's going to be in a very, very strong spot, just as a baseline. Of new builds of Kano, or sort of newer iterations of Kano that a lot of us are testing, and I'm also testing, trying to move away from an all-in combo into a tempo-focused strategy. So instead of just setting up for combo, you try to push impactful on-hits, though Kano doesn't have a lot of them. We have a couple left. Impactful on-hits that basically force the opponent. They don't, they're going to die very quickly. So my list, I call it Paradiso. Don't ask. But that list uses amp cards to try to present these big questions to the opponent. So, for example, if you go Aether Flare and you amp it with Chorus of the Amphitheater, you send it for 5 to deal an extra 5 damage. So now your opponent probably 11 damage that turn, which you simply can't do against Kano, to start blocking your cards. And if they start A-Bing on your cards, they have fewer cards to attack you back, which means you don't need to worry about dying as quickly, which means you have more time to find more cards, to find potions, to find wildfires, and keep it going. Also means that your combo needs to deal less damage, right? They will die very, very quickly. And so that slows them down, gives us more breathing room, and gives us a chance to win. It also gives us more flexibility. If we were to look at my Paradiso list a bit more, you'll see we've got Aether Flare, we've got Spindles, Reverberates, Chain Lightnings. Deck is to try to go really wide and present a lot of damage every turn, which means that we can chip our opponent down really, really fast, and using Chorus and Amp and things of that nature, really hammer on low AB aggressive decks. Drop them down. I consistently can drop people down to 20 life. There's no deck in the world that can survive at 20 life unless they're running Spell Void 4 or something crazy. Bad combos kill everybody when you reach that point. So that's the idea behind Paradiso. You'll be able to so much damage that it really doesn't matter. You're given the opportunity to attack at a new angle. So it's not just wildfire combo. The deck has avenues where you can deal 10, 15, 20 damage on your own turn and save some equipment so that you can then wildfire, spell, blazing, or just wildfire, spell, and you'll be able to win the game. Something ICBM can't dream of. If you don't draw wildfire, you basically just lose. If you're playing a tempo-based list, you cannot draw wildfire, and you can still win the game because there's other lines available to you.
Yeah, that's where you can have the Threadbare Tunic. You can use the resource on your own turn versus the, I always forget it, Spellfire Cloak is on our opponent's turn only.
And if you've never played with Threadbare before, it was very popular during the heavy hitters meta all the time. There are obviously going to be niche cases where you'll lose the game because you can't activate Threadbare. But compare that to the amount of times that it'll be completely no difference whatsoever. You can just activate Kano, go Ragamuffin's Hat, Kano again, banish your card. You have no cards in hand, crack Threadbare, you get your resource. On your own turn, it's very much, I just banished an Aether Spindle. I have Flare in my hand. And the Flare break Threadbare because I have no cards left in hand. Send my Spindle, and you just threaten so much. You gain so much power that it's worth losing your resource. Example I gave before, if you've got Blazing and Arsenal, you can do some really crazy stuff with, Flare and Lesson, and then when your hand is empty, break Threadbare, break your Stormstriders, play a Blazing, and sneak in an extra 10, 15 damage here. Blocks are very strong, and the amount of times you lose the game because of having Threadbare are very small compared to the number of games it can win you.
Yeah, as long as you have Ragamuffins and a Deja Vu, you can break Striders.
Relatively consistently. Also, Kindle is amazing for this because Kindle you put that thing in Arsenal immediately, and now it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very good list.
And even if you get snapback, you're like, oh, cool, the perfect arsenal. After boots are gone, so
Yeah.
wizard spell you can still cast.
A lot of nice options there.
Yeah, so looking at the different lists, we have Blitzkrieg as well, which seems like a lot heavier red list
Yes.
at
So
20.
Blitzkrieg or mono waning moon Kano basically. It's got 23 reds and 34 blues. A lot of blues, much fewer yellows. This is a creation of a guy on Discord called Cat Pair. And basically, the idea is every single turn, you have Aether Quickenings, Internal Infernos, Photon Splicing, Scalding Rains, and even Overflows and Lessons and so forth. You are very, very consistently going to be, and you'd be very surprised at how many decks in the current meta aren't actually able. 6 damage every turn very quickly drops you below 30 health. And once you're below 30 health, combos start looking very scary, especially because if you combo somebody and you drop them to 6, 7 health, a 1 for 4 into Waning Moon threatens 6 on your turn, but it also threatens 7 or more on the opponent's turn. So your post-combo kill threshold is way, way better. There's been a couple of people who've taken it to second place finishes at ProQuest and a lot of top 8s. So it's definitely a build I would keep my eye on. I'm going to be playing it quite a bit as well, just kind of expanding on it because it has an incredible matchup into all the Earth heroes, all the slower decks, and going 1 for 4 Waning Moon, 1 for 4 Waning Moon, just chipping them down, walking the life totals to a low amount. And when your opponent's really low on health, your combo is just going to kill them. Even though, obviously, with just Waning Moon, you lose a lot of combo potential with Crucible. That's the big problem.
Yeah.
Your Wildfire is only going to be coming in for 5 unless you draw a Kindle or a Will. That situation, Waning Moon is a very, very good card into high AB slow metas because you're able to trade damage with the best of them, combo and they don't, so you're just going to win. So that's why Blitzkrieg is quite strong. It's worse into a lower AB aggro format. It's slightly worse than ICBM and Paradiso at fighting like Syndra, ninjas and the like, but it has a fantastic plan into the slower decks, and because of that, it's able to 12 poppers in the sideboard to try to give you a reasonable Prism matchup. From the testing that I've seen and that I've done, it turns it from a near 0% win rate to a kind of a game. It's possible I haven't played into enough good Prisms with it yet, but there's quite real potential for it to actually have a game into Prism. And if it does, and it also has a reasonable game into the rest of the format, that could make it the default version of Kano on its own, because if we don't lose to Prism anymore, suddenly we're basically just going to beat the entire game, which deal, albeit less often than...
So we were talking about the Blitzkrieg. I had one question in regards to, since we said it had a bunch of poppers, where's Blitzkrieg? The new card that was spoiled for Kano, Burn Bear, would that be an addition to these poppers or a replacement of one of them?
That's going to replace the worst popper, because the idea behind Blitzkrieg is to present 6 damage every turn. So if you happen to draw a hand, for example, with a popper and with Burn Bear, you can just play Burn Bear and pop with your attack, or if you choose to, you can simply pop with Burn Bear and then swing the attack for 7, 8 damage. So Burn Bear is definitely going to be a 3 of sideboard card in most builds of Kano, I think. I'll probably run it as well in replacement of a Swell Tidings or an Aether Quickening in ICBM, because it's a big spell, so it accomplishes the main goal we want, and it also has sideboard relevance, especially if something like Dromai ever comes back again. Being able to pop a dragon on demand is huge.
Yeah,
that being said,
I was gonna say the only downside is the dust. It gets rid of the phantasm for them.
Yeah. So that's unfortunate, and if dust becomes the primary way that Dromai plays, well, then it'll be useless. But it's a nice tech piece. In Kano specifically, it's got some serious issues. The number one, of course, being it doesn't pitch.
Yeah.
That's bad. That's really bad, and that is the main reason why I'm not a fan of the card at all. I think it's a good tech card, And I actually think that the idea of removing pitch value and block value and the like is a really cool way for LSS to give Wizard really good cards. I was thinking that they could just have a no pitch 3 for 7, a 3 for 7 arcane that can't pitch. Sounds really crazy. That would actually, it is a very real downside. Not being able to pitch is going to lose you games. Possibly enough games in testing, I'll have to find out, but it'd be enough of a drawback to not play the card at all, simply because we cannot afford to draw a card that's pitchless.
Yeah,
Kano's the most greedy deck when it comes to resources in the game. We simply can't afford to do that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then on the other side, it costs 3. If you Kano into this on your combo turn, whoa, you need a lot of resources. So that's going to be really rough.
Yeah, the baseline 6 is not an incentive enough to play it in the combo because you get no additional benefit other than, oh, cool, now it's dealing 10.
Yeah. So I will say the thing that I'm most excited for with Burn Bear, twofold. One is the ability to remove something like pitch for a really strong effect. I don't like that they made it so weak in that regard because it's a 6 that's really expensive.
Yeah.
But what I'm really excited for is the possibility of LSS printing new cards that are just on rate or slightly below rate, but have discard effects. For example, we have the pop effect. You can destroy a thing with Phantasm. Now imagine you have, let's say, a 2 for 4, red 2 for 4. It's not very good damage-wise, but it has instant pay 3, discard this, negate target attack action. The controller gains an action point. Thing like that, where we are given a new, kind of like how Meld is a really exciting mechanic potentially, where you can have just, damage on one side and then something really good on the other side. They're both overpriced, but the flexibility makes it good. And by the same token, we could start seeing cards where it's like a 2 for 3, 2 for 4 arcane. It's bad, but you can also discard it for an effect that's really useful and gain a lot of flexibility to kind of get around the underrate damage that Wizard suffers from.
Yeah, you think that's
where LSS goes with in the future.
Yeah, you think they'll go with that instead of giving us the rewind aetherized treatment as an instant? You think they'd give us those instead?
I see the potential for it. My fear with a card like Aetherize and Rewind is just how specific it is. Obviously, it's really rough in Kano because, we can't Kano into it. Looking for to Blaze. It's a working assumption under pretty much everyone in the Wizard community that once Kano leaves or just before he leaves, at some point we're going to get Blaze, or a hero very, very similar to Blaze in CC, who is just a non-talented baseline wizard, plays cards consistently on both turns, but doesn't have the crazy combo potential that Kano does. A Rewind or an Aetherize could be a very playable card. However, to rewind like an attack action would require the card to either be super expensive or very niche, like it can only be 1 or less cost card, something like that. Because into, for example, Azalea, rewinding her arrow would be absolutely game break. It would be like playing an Arclight Sentinel out. You just end her turn. If she's already used her bow and you bounce her attack back to hand, she can't do anything for the rest of the turn, You're carefully balanced. That's why I like the idea of using Meld and Discard for okay effects and okay damage, but because you have both of them on the same card, it'll make a playable deck and a playable hero. To dig into it very clearly, the best matchups for Kano across the board are going to be decks that want to win the game turns 5 and 6. Slower decks that try to goose. However, aggro decks are usually relatively good matchups for Kano because, in the example of Syndra and Fi, ninjas that aren't Katsu, basically, they don't have a consistent way to prevent lots of damage on Wildfire. As long as we can find our combo early enough, even though it's not an amazing combo, because they can't really block it well, we're going to end up winning the game. So into aggro, we're pretty good. Into mid-range, we're pretty good. We're really, really good into everything except light and shadow. as a rule, light and shadow decks have a consistent ability to disrupt us, or just have so much spell void and a cohesive game plan that it really is hard for us to fight. The worst combination for Kano is going to be an aggressive deck with AB3 and Spell Void. And decks that are able to present on-hit draw effects. Aurora was a good example of that.
Yeah. And out of all these lists that you've tested and stuff, what is your favorite card out of Kano, regardless if it's good or not, but it's consistently made your list?
The card that I genuinely like the most is probably just Kindle. The other card that competes for just most fun, best, I love it the most, is Potion of Deja Vu. The amount of stupid things, the number of stupid things you can do with that card. At the baseline, just putting a blue on top of your deck to draw from rags is fine. Able to pitch away combo pieces, put them back on top of the deck to keep playing them, or to use, like Overflow the Aether Well and Sonic Booms and Floodgates. Play Overflow, gain 2 resources. Play Sonic Boom, trigger Boom. Hey, look, it was Floodgates on top of the deck. Banish Floodgates, play Floodgates, draw cards without even using Ragamuffin's hat, just pitching everything to Potion of Deja Vu.
Yeah, I have that in the combo guide for Sonic Boom Floodgates. Like, oh yeah, you put them both instead of rags, and you can pitch it, or you could still rags Sonic Boom for the blue, the guarantee.
Exactly.
But if you have Overflow,
those 2 cards are probably the top of my list of just the most fun, interesting cards to play with.
Yeah. Okay. And then before we get into the custom cards, do you think that what do you think Kano's missing? Like, do you want to lean towards the tempo side? You've already spoken that you're not a big fan of leaning towards the Wildfire 40k kill.
If I can go on a quick tangent here, the problem that occurred with Kano is back when Everfest released, and we actually discovered the combo of Ragamuffin's hat and Wildfire and all that stuff, and it really became mainstream. There are kind of 2 avenues Kano could go down. You could either print more interactive pieces like Flare and Spindle and Sonic Boom, where they get better the more damage is dealt, or you can go all in on the combo route. And quite frankly, the tempo-based version with interaction and scaling effects is much more fun for you to play, and it's much more fun for the opponent to play.
Yeah.
Because the opponent actually has to make meaningful decisions. So what I believe Kano's really missing is interaction. He needs interaction badly. And unfortunately, the current most popular build, and I would still say the best build of Kano, throws interaction out the window completely. It's a joke. All you do is find potions and then you win the game with Wildfire.
Yeah.
For Kano to be more interesting and more fun, we need to see a return of tempo and active pieces. And for that to happen, we need Floodgates and Overflow to be banned or just removed from the game. What Kano really needs is a return to tempo and interaction. You gotta ban Floodgates, ban Overflow, those need to go, and replace them with on-hit effects that the opponent actually cares about and has some way to beat them. So we'll talk about them in the custom card situation. I have a couple of examples that I think would have been really good for Kano to make him more healthy and more interesting. Besides that, Kano's missing the ability to consistently stack. I think Tome of Aetherwind should have been unbanned.
Yeah.
I'd trade Floodgates for it in a heartbeat, but Kano's missing the ability to interact and to stack consistently, and that really holds him back, both from a fun perspective, because though it's very powerful, current Kano's very linear, and not a lot of people like playing him for hundreds of games.
Mm-hmm.
And he also loses to himself way too often for most
100%.
people to stomach. It's hard to sit down at a tournament unless you're a one trick like I am. I'm just used to it. I can embrace the variance. I understand that's how it works. But for a lot of people, it's hard to justify sitting down to play a deck where at one point during the tournament, if it's 10 rounds, you're going to lose once or twice just because the deck refuses to cooperate with you. That's pretty close to what a lot of other decks do, but in this deck, truly nothing you do matters. You simply cannot win the game from the point that the deck is shuffled. The way it's arranged,
Yeah.
you're never going to win the game, and that's really hard to stomach for most players. That's also why I'd love to see a return of tempo. We need some cards to support tempo, but that version of the deck at least does something in between the game starting and the game finishing that is meaningful for both players. So that's what I'd like to see. Kano needs some interaction to come back,
Yeah.
and
My favorite version of Kano was pitch stack Kano during whatchamacallit. Heavy hitters. I enjoyed playing that deck the most.
Yeah, I would agree that from a meta health perspective, Kano was at his peak during heavy hitters. We could definitely be outraced, and we had a really good plan to defensive decks, and it was absolutely all on the Kano player. If you were good and you played correctly, you were going to win pretty much every game. During that meta, I think I lost 2 games during the competitive events I went to in total. The deck was absolutely fearsome, but it was a healthy kind. It wasn't like I flipped on turn 2 and I win the game, haha,
Yeah.
you lose. I would win by skill, and that's really what Kano's missing right now. There's not as much skill involved navigating each turn.
It's just a back. It's just like, yeah, like you said, it's like, oh, I got 3 potions. Sick. All right, let's go.
Yeah.
So I think since everybody in this video is going to see my cards multiple times in a row, why don't you start off with yours so get some variance in there.
Do you have the list that I sent you over?
Just send it in.
Copy paste a couple. There we go. All right. Well, let's talk about my 2 ideas. So, these in particular were designed in the thought of having a less consistent blue base. This is really what I wish had been printed instead of all the Zap variants and all our expansion slots basically up until Kindle were just slight side grades. This is the kind of thing that I believe Kano really would benefit from. So we'll start with the first one, which I called Intrude on the Mind. 1 cost, red, it's a 3 block. Deal 3 arcane damage to any target. Then, if it dealt damage to an opposing hero, they reveal up to X cards from their hands. You choose a card revealed this way with cost X or less, and they discard it, where X is the damage dealt by them in mind.
Yeah.
So this does 2 important things, I think, for Kano. It's interaction, and it's also not universal. The reason I think this type of card would be healthy is it hits the opponent's hand. It's got some options to it. It's kind of like Pulse Wave Harpoon. That's what I modeled it after.
Yeah.
But it is absolutely useless on combo turn. And that's where I think the really important distinction needs to be, that people, the player base at large, is scared of giving Kano good cards because it makes him too good. You know, he can use them on combo turn. He's a combo deck already, and so on and so forth. Cards like this are only going to be good on your turn, and they're very specific. This doesn't work especially well with other cards together. It's just a 1 for 3, and if it hits the opponent, it gives you the potential to rip cards from their hand. If it's an aggro deck, the biggest problems Kano's always had is a lack of interaction. Aggro decks just say, I don't care what you're doing, I'm going to try to kill you faster than you kill me. This forces them to slow down. If they choose not to block at all, I take their best card, I get rid of it. If they block a little bit, they give me more of an option. If they have AB2, they could potentially just save themselves by Arcane Bearing, revealing an expensive card. I can't really take it. It gives you more options. So this type of card I think would be super helpful, especially because it's completely useless into decks like Brute and Guardian, for example. If a Brute used AB3, this card does absolutely nothing. I deal 1 damage, maybe, and I look at a card in their hand and that's it. Guardians don't care at all. They just tank it, and all their cards cost more than the damage dealt, so it's less important. That's why I think scaling damage is really the way that Kano should have been designed and supported. It's good in the specific matchups, bad into others.
Yeah, because you can flare this to try and hit the higher cost hero cards.
There's certainly a danger of this, flare plus this absolutely ruins the opponent. Again, when I build these cards, I assume that we could get rid of some of the other cards in Kano's kit. In particular, I think if we had less blue zaps and we're forced to run more of the 2 costs, this would be a lot healthier
Mm-hmm.
because you can't just Kano on your combo turn and guarantee you flip into a 0 cost or a bomb card. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of why Kano spiraled into being toxic, is because our combo became so consistent. We were able to perfectly math everything out and know, like, okay, either I flip a red or a yellow, and then I win because it's a good card, or it's not, and it's just a zap, and then I can calculate my damage and my resource count perfectly. If you
Yeah.
replace some of those,
Ellis became their
including
own enemy.
yeah, they became their own enemy. They gave us side grades, which we complained about relentlessly, but they ended up being absolutely incredible for Kano because the deck became so refined and consistent. Like now you activate Kano, you know it's either going to be an extender, a combo ender, or a blue, a 0 cost blue, unless it's like a potion. But like
Yeah.
the math becomes so linear and straightforward because you know exactly what's in the deck. If you were to replace all those zaps with these cards, your blue blaze is going to be like Voltic Bolts and Emeritus Scoldings, things like that, and then you have these powerful red cards. I think that would be a fairly balanced um, inclusion in the deck.
Yeah.
So that's my anti-hand card. I think it'd be really helpful. It helps Kano's worst matchups historically, which are aggro decks that just ignore him. This
Mm-hmm.
forces them to interact a little bit. The
Yeah.
other one, I call Bolt to the Spine, and it does something similar for the Arsenal. So 1 cost red, 3 block, deal 3 arcane damage to any target. If you dealt arcane damage to an opposing hero this way, you can choose a face down Arsenal and turn it face up, then destroy a face up card in an Arsenal with cost X or less, where X is the damage dealt by Bolt to the Spine.
Yeah.
Same idea. This stops opposing heroes, from being able to slap whatever they want in Arsenal and ignore Kano. Now they have to think a little bit more about, you often think when you're playing against other heroes, oh, is this okay if my opponent sends a CNC? Am I okay with this being in my arsenal?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the answer is definitely no, and you choose not to arsenal a key card because you think they're about to send a CNC at you. Another reason why I made these 1 costs is because you can potentially go Lesson in Lava for 4 and then Kano into one of these interactive cards and send it at the opponent. This gives Kano more of a toolbox of being
Mm-hmm.
able to present interaction and damage on the same turn. I also think, once again, this is a fairly balanced card. Maybe you'd have to mucky with the cost a little bit, potentially
Yeah.
make it a 2 cost because of how strong the effect is, but it gives us interaction into those aggro decks that ignore us, and also is pretty useless into those slower decks that Kano's already reasonable into because they can just AB, reveal a 4 cost card
Mm-hmm.
and nothing happens. It's not a universally powerful card, which I think is important.
Yeah. Yeah. Your cards are a little bit more fair than what I have created. I didn't keep into mind balance. I'm just like, what? This is what we need interaction.
I think we need interaction, and I will say specifically for the cards that I've presented to be printed, I think we'd also need to ban or unprint in this timeline. Let's imagine that instead of getting contest the minefield, we got intrude on the mind, and instead of getting kindle, we got bolt to the spine. These kinds of cards genuinely can't exist in a deck in a world where Kano has a way to push wildfire to 7, 8, 9, 10, because it's just too powerful. It simply is too powerful. I would replace Overflow, Floodgates, Kindle, Will of Arcana, most of our zaps. I would replace all of them with cards like this to make Kano a more interesting tempo deck.
Yeah, like this would.
Having a super consistent machine. One other thing I'd like to point out, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is really important here, is both of these cards are completely pointless on combo turn, right?
Mm-hmm.
What kills Kano on combo turn is, does the opponent have an Oasis Respite? If they do, neither of these cards are useful. It's just a 1 for 3 arcane, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But on our turn, it's a very impactful card, and I think that's an important thing to have when you're trying to support a combo deck like Kano's, making sure this isn't good on combo turn. For example, back in the day, everybody wanted to make a card that dealt like 2, 3 arcane damage, but you gained life equal to the damage dealt.
Yeah, I have that for an Earth Wizard.
Before Earth Wizard existed.
Yeah.
But obviously the problem with that is, what happens if you go Wildfire for like 4, then you hit him for 7, and then you gain 7 life, and then you Blazing 8? Like, it just became silly too quickly, because even Flare into a life gain card was crazy. But going your combo, you could be like at 1 life, combo them, drop them to 5, you gain 7 or 8 life, go up back to 10 or something crazy. Like, it just became unhealthy very quickly. And that's why a card like this, I believe these cards would be pretty useful because it helps on your turn, doesn't actually help on their turn.
Yeah, and this I honestly like these things, the style, so that way we can have interact. We'd have less off turns if we're going to a pitch deck. Which is, if these were in my deck, I would definitely try to, just so that way I can, like, I won't need to. Like, we still have lessons, we could do lessons combos, but this would enable us to be able to stack more often because we have something to do on off turns other than send like Spindle, which is still a good card to send, but
It certainly is. And I think if for those who aren't super familiar with Kano, the best cards Kano's ever had have an Aether Spindle and Aether Flare purely because of that stacking damage. The more damage they deal, the better they get, which forces the opponent to respect us. And I think that would be a really important thing for Kano to have moving forward. And Wizard as a whole, the most popular cards in Kano historically have all been from Arcane Rising and Crucible of War. That era of design has been the most interesting and the most fun and the most balanced overall. And a
yeah.
return to that style with the two that I made, I think, would be a really interesting and a fun way to support the hero, as opposed to printing us more and more surge, resource cheating cards that we've seen.
Yeah, I'm gonna head into mine because when I designed these, I wanted specifically to ensure that Surge was not included. So I might have gone a little over the top with cost restraint and or the effect, but some non cards, like some non spells, I thought a lot of heroes, they have a offhand. I'm like, okay, wizards, that's easy. You just make a wand and a tome. So like when I made these two, the Cindering Wood and Arcane Teachings, I didn't include it on here. But if you equipped a wand, you would have to have a tome. You could not have a Arcane Lantern or a shield. These had to be paired together.
I'm fine with that. I think it's a really cool idea. And I'm excited to dig into these because I do believe some of these cards are very, very cool.
So like with the wand, I didn't quite know what the best thing to do was, but I did incorporate the new tap mechanic that they're putting in and everything. So it is a one-handed wand that has to be paired with a tome so we can make more tomes. Instant tap, pay one resource, deal one arcane to any target. So I chose this. I wanted something quick, cheap, and it pairs into a lot of the cards that I created, and being that you have to deal arcane damage. So this is an easy outlet for some of the cards I created.
Well, let's dig into it.
Yeah.
First off, I love the design. I think it's really clever. Tapping, instant, just deal one, pay one is really good. You can use it on your turn, you can use it on the opponent's turn. The only thing that I'm a little scared of here is combined with AMP, this kind of wrecks ally-based decks, sort of.
Yeah.
Because, which I'm okay with as a wizard player. The bane of my existence was Dromai for a while because we can't deal with permanents. I think this is a really nice idea, especially if you're making it so that you can't just play two of them and ping away at allies and basically just shut down illusionist and ally-based decks. It's really nice. It works really nicely with Arcane Teaching. I think Arcane Teaching is potentially completely broken.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about the cost of it because initially it's instant tap, pay 3, draw card, only if you dealt arcane damage. But I did add the clause of it's reduced by the amount of arcane damage you've dealt. So I wasn't sure what the cost it should be.
If we were to put this into just a non-Kano wizard, I think both of these cards are actually really nice. They're well balanced. You can amp, you can trigger some of the other cards we've talked about, we will talk about. I actually really like the designs. In Kano specifically, it would be absolutely broken because we would most certainly, I would throw away Crucible to get Cinderwood and Arcane Teaching together, because if I Wildfire and it connects for 2, and then I play another card, I just get a free card. I just get to draw a card, and that would be crazy strong. Another thing would be just on my normal turns, going Spindle for 4. It takes, they take a couple points of damage. Cinderwood, they take another. Activate Arcane Teaching, draw a card.
Yeah.
In Kano, you'd very consistently make it free, and then you're just drawing extra cards every turn, and that gets silly very, very fast.
Yeah, in my head. Oh, you go ahead.
Blaze in a like Blaze, for example, I think they would be really fun, pretty balanced cards to have. I like them a lot.
Yeah, my when I made it 3 costs and requiring the damage, I wanted people to respect this tome like people respect Mask of Momentum. So they're like, okay, cool. I'm gonna hit you. Are you gonna let me hit you a few times? Cool. You let me hit me. I hit you for 3 damage. I get a card for that.
Yeah.
So make people warp around it. Actually respect instead of us having a Kano curve. Like, oh, nobody's playing Kano. Oh, everybody's playing Kano. It'd be like, oh, there's going to be a Kano. I have to have AB3 for the arcane teaching.
Arcane teaching. Now obviously that has some potential with dangerous potential, kind of like how a Scepter of Pain was just banned because it put such a high cost on it.
Yeah.
If you don't have AB3, Florian's gonna dumpster you because he's gonna, Scepter consistently.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'm really scared about with this particular setup is if your opponent is aggro and can't consistently stop you from drawing cards, you're just gonna swamp the opponent in card advantage. Especially if we'll talk about the next couple cards, you're able to start triggering these.
Yeah. So like the next one I have is Concussive Blast. I like the design of 1-for-4s because they're just good value. This one deals one cost 4 damage to any target, and if you've dealt arcane damage this turn, it can be played as an instant. I wanted something similar to Snapback, but better because it's a 1-for-4. But I did make the instant requirement. You have to have dealt arcane already.
I love the card, but it's broken.
Yeah.
Because it's just gonna be so strong. I mean, anytime you draw, let's say you were to build this in Kano. On combo turn, it's ludicrous because it's better snapback. You just play Wildfire, deal damage, send 4 more, blazing. It's crazy good. Even in a non-Kano wizard, the reason why this is too strong, I think, is because you effectively just get a 1-for-4 with Go Again. Anytime you deal damage on your turn, you're just sending this, and arcane damage is very underrated, but every wizard in the game has some kind of combo element, and you can't just be eating 4 effectively dominate over and over and over again. Especially assuming something like Blaze is made, this gets silly fast. If you were to do something like Striders, Wildfire, now you can play this, activate Blaze's ability, you play a 3rd spell. It could potentially be way too strong.
So do you think it would have to be like a 2 cost or something, or?
It'd have to be a 2 cost most likely. I don't like the way that LSS locks us into a 1-for-4 and then downside. But I think this would be, in a tempo-based wizard, this would probably be too strong.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think being 1-for-4. If I wanted it to be more like Snapback, it would maybe have to be a 1-for-3, or if I wanted to keep the 4 damage, the 2 cost. But I wanted a similar effect to Snapback. I wanted to be able to, it's like, hey, you took damage, cool, now I'm going to punish you for doing that. I have a secondary spell.
Yeah. I also think if you make it 2 costs, it just pairs very nicely with Cinderwood, Pick them for 1. Do they take it? Here's 4 more. If they don't, it's fine. It's still below rate, which is what LSS insists Wizard has. But it would be a reasonable rate if you can consistently do it. So I like it.
Yeah. The next one I have is Aether Implosion. So 1 cost, deal 3 damage to target opponent. If it deals arcane damage to opponent, they banish a card from Arsenal. So this is similar to your, what I said, Arsenal on this one. Yeah, both the spine. So like they have to. So I modeled this after not quite CNC, but more similar to Leave No Witness. It's a 0, so where they have the 0-for-4, and it just, because CNC is a 2 cost, this is a 1 cost, and Leave No Witness is a 0, so it's the in between of all those, but it's arcane, so it's harder to play around.
Yes. I think the issue with this card is it's just too hard for most decks to deal with. If you're playing into, obviously in Kano, this is stupid. It's like crazy good in Kano because you always take their arsenal. You always take a card from their hand if it were to do that. Most wizards, like a Waning Moon wizard, it kind of again forces your opponent to have AB3. And unfortunately, I think is the hard that it goes across the line of being interaction because it's uninteractable interaction. Unless you specifically are able to have AB3, this just takes a card while dealing damage, and there's nothing your opponent can do about it, which I think is just a little bit overtuned.
Yeah. Yeah, yours having to be face down, and it makes it the cost restriction more fair.
Yeah, I think that is a more realistic of what LSS would do. I also think this could be absolutely frightful in Blaze. Imagine playing against Blaze and your opponent just randomly snipes you with this. Your arsenal's gone. If you were planning on using your arsenal for that turn, it's over with. If you have a wizard that could consistently use something like Absorb an Aether, there's literally no deck in the game that'd be able to stop it, and I think it's just a little bit too strong, especially if you could play it at instant speed, just a little too strong to be safe.
Yeah. Then I have for the next card, it's not quite the same as your Intrude the Mind. I feel like it's a different side. It still targets their hand, but I have Spell Swindle. It costs 3, deals 5 arcane to any target. I like to switch between opponent and any target, so that way not everything is universally acceptable. Like, oh, just...
Yeah.
And if this dealt damage to an opponent, they banish a card at hand from random. That's probably too strong there, the random portion. But if it was a non-attack action was banished this way, you may play it as an instant.
I like the card a lot. I actually think that the random, banish a card at random from their hand, that alone is already amazing because you don't know how good it is. They don't know how good it's going to be. Being able to play a non-attack action as from banished as an instant, that's a really fun twist to put on it. I think you already know what the danger of the card is. Your opponent can't stop it. Unless they have an Oasis for Spider something, your opponent can't stop this card. And I think the dangerous part with making interaction with arcane damage is because very few people can stop it. Anytime it's just on hit and not, equal to X where the damage is dealt or surge or something, it becomes toxic very quickly because it's like Aether Ice Vein. People could sort of get around Aether Ice Vein where you just AB1 and then you pay 2. In a situation like this, though, I think it realistically would just turn into your opponent loses 5 life, they banish a card from their hand at random. Because if you're not covering the damage, you're losing a card from hand by ABing, and then you lose a card from your hand from the effect. So at that point, the smartest thing to do would probably just be take 5 and lose a card. And I think that's, again, just a little bit too tuned. Like a little too good, The opponent can't actually interact with it. They just lose a card and take 5 damage.
Yeah, these cards are my innate hate for Ranger and Assassin. Deal 1 damage, strip your hand, shuffle your deck, make you cry.
Exactly, and I think we don't want to turn into instant speed assassin. That would actually make my locals kill me. So we better not do that.
Yeah. I think that was just I was in a spiteful mood when I made these cards. Like, you know what? And I specifically wanted it to be banished so they couldn't get it back with their codexes. Like, you know what? You can't have your card back. It's just gone.
Yeah, I will say I really like the idea behind these cards. Cinderwood, Arcane Teaching, and Concussive Blast in particular, I think are really fun designs. I also really like that we're going for the hand and arsenal interaction. I think that's what Wizard has desperately been needing. But obviously, we need to figure out how to balance it so that it's not just you always lose a card and take damage. There's some nuance to it to make people less angry at us.
Yeah. And then I wanted it. In my head, I did not think we would ever get tomes back, so I made my own tome. Instead of Tome of Aether Wind, I got Fire, so we still have a different element. It's a 1 cost, draw 2. Can only be played if you dealt arcane damage this turn, and then it has go again, because I hate not having action points.
I think this is a very fun design. You can't abuse it with something like Blaze, which I think is important. Go again. Obviously, if this was in Kano, it would be ludicrous. This would be insane because it has go again. That's where it would be crazy because it's so easy to just ping someone from it. You could activate Kano with a zap, ping them for 1. They probably take it. Suddenly you just draw 2 cards. If you go against that, if you Kano it, it gets crazy. All
Mhm,
sorts of things can happen to make the card really strong. But for Wizard in general, I think it is very good. I like the design a lot. You can only use it if it's dealt damage that turn. You've got a couple of things like Cinderwood or maybe things of that nature. Go again is very dangerous on a Kano card, on a Wizard card, obviously.
yeah.
But I think it's restrictive enough that it would be fairly safe to print. I really like, especially if Kano's gone. If Kano's in the game, that would be a dangerous card. If Kano's not in the game, I think it would actually be. I think it'd be a good card. I like it a lot.
Yeah, that's why I didn't specifically say cards for Kano. I just wrote base wizard cards because I felt like there was some sort of things lacking.
And again, I am famously outspoken. I absolutely hate what's happened to Kano and how he's gone, and I really love the potential that Blaze has. If you were to print most of these cards, Blaze could be a super interesting hero in CC. Just basic, non-talented wizard having a cohesive kit would be really nice to see. Obviously, Implosion and Swindle are a little overtuned, but the
Hmm.
theme, the idea of caring about have you dealt damage, gaining access to instant speed play, things like that, I really like the idea, and I think it would be really, really good to see Wizard have something like this come out.
Yeah, this was my mind. I had another list of like 10 or so, but I thought these were the most cohesive and least out of control that I thought of.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah,
that-
honestly, print if you were to print an armory deck for a new baseline non-talented wizard, and this was the kind of kit that they had, I would be super excited to play that because you're getting consistent both turn plays, instant speed plays, you've got interaction, you've
Mhm.
got some spike pow potential, going Tome of Aether Fire to get you a really big turn. I find that to be very interesting. There's a lot of really cool ways you could build a wizard like this, and I think it'd have an interesting identity and a very clear identity for the base wizard, because that's where things have gone really fuzzy in the last year, as we've seen Blaze be printed, but then
Mhm.
we've also seen Verdance and Oscilio active, they fight on a very different axis than Icelander, Kano, and Blaze do. So a return to just like this is wizard, and then here are the talented flavors of wizard would be really nice to see.